This video tells about the source codes components of the Botpress server. Before showing the source code, I'll show you where to get the code, so you can download it from GitHub from this URL address. I'll also have a Botpress server running in parallel, so I'll show some code components in the running server, like how they, in which UI part they work. I'll use Visual Studio Code to show you the code of the Botpress server. So I have the server downloaded from the URL I've shown you previously. So now I'll open it in the Visual Studio Code. Okay, here is the project. The Botpress server is developed using Node.js, TypeScript, JavaScript, and React for UI. In this particular video, we won't review UI components, but only backend logic components. The first thing we'll speak about is where the actual execution of the server starts. So we go into the src folder, bp folder, and open index.ts file. Here is the entry point to the entire server. This is the first file being called when you start Botpress server from the terminal or somehow else. This file actually does the load of the configs, sets the environment variables, and handles command line commands. So here you can see, like, it sets, for example, process, Botpress events, like event emitter, empty dictionary for modules, sets the project location, and stuff like that. Here is the part where command line options are handled in this part of the code. The main one here is let me check. Is the serve command. It basically sets up some additional variables to be used during the launch of the server, and finally the execution goes to the bootstrap file. Okay, I can open it here. The bootstrap file makes the loading of the modules and starts the Botpress object. It doesn't load modules completely, it just receives the entry points of the modules, and the actual loading of the modules will happen a bit later. So here is the code. I'll show you the loop. Here is it, where modules are handled. And finally, the next important transition is to the Botpress object. Yeah, here is it. Botpress start. Modules are passed inside this start, and we'll see this start next. Okay, Botpress class is stored in the, let me see. In the Botpress TS folder. And this class is pretty huge. I'll tell you about what it does. First of all, it makes a load of the modules. I'll scroll to the actual line. So this is a very important line because this actually calls the module loading using ModuleLoader component. Here is it. And here is the part where modules are actually being loaded. And almost after the module loading, there is an initialize services call, which makes actual initialization of and start of many different services. I'll tell you about all the services loaded from this class and about some other services that are loaded from the other places. Actually, I'll tell you about the major part of the services I found in the source codes, but not about all of them. Okay, and these services are listed here in the fields of the Botpress class. Here are they. They are injected using dependency injection. So basically, this helps to make the code better unit tested and allows you to support different parts of the source codes easier. So I'll go one by one, not necessarily in the order that these services are presented in the Botpress class. I'll just start from the most important ones and tell about them first. So the first service I want to tell you about is ModuleLoader. Here is it. Okay, I'll go to the class definition. Here is the class definition. This class loads modules one by one. I'll show you the loop where it happens. Here is it. So it sends on server started to the module, to each module basically, and it makes load unload of the modules if they are needed only for one bot. So when a bot is started and it has some additional modules in dependencies, ModuleLoader loads this particular module and unloads it if the bot is stopped. This object, or this, let's say, ModuleLoader service notifies modules about the changes in the dialog in the flow of the bot. Okay, just wait a second. I'll restart. The server, okay. So ModuleLoader notifies modules about the changes in the flow. And also it returns bot templates provided by particular modules. So modules can add additional bot templates to the bot creation UI. And also this ModuleLoader service returns skills provided by the modules. Skills are those that can be used in the flow creation. And ModuleLoader also allows you to get the list of modules or a particular module by its name. Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty important component. Then there is an HTTPServer service. Here is it. It's basically a wrap over the Express HTTP server. This one allows you to set up reverse proxy, makes the routing of the URL requests. I show you where it happens. So here is where the router is set up. This service raises unlicensed error in case the server is unlicensed, and also it raises unexpected error. Where is it? In case of some unexpected exception is sent. And also it sets host port and URL values from the config. Okay. Then the BotService service, here is it. This one provides API to access the bots, makes creation deletion of the bots, and mount unmount of bots. Here is it. It's pretty easy to understand what it does if you review the methods. Then CMSService. Where is it? Let me check. Here is it. Okay, I'll find it. Using this way. Okay. The CMS service makes create, read, update, and delete for the content elements in the LMS or in the CMS, basically here. It writes information about the content elements in the database and writes content files in the file system. Also, it returns the list of the content available, calls the rendering of the content for the particular messenger platform, for example, Facebook or Telegram. Okay, it's also a very important one. Then DialogEngine, here is it. DialogEngine is responsible for loading of the bot flows, these ones. So it has an API to find a node in the flow, send chat event to the current node, make transition to the other flow, end the session when the flow is ended, etc. By the way, there is an ambiguity between two types of events in the Botpress server. One type is chat events, let's say. They are not called chat events in the Botpress code, but they have this sense. These chat events are the thing that you can access, for example, when you try to read the user input. So normally when you want to read user input and set it into some variable, let's say temp, then you can use event content or payload. As far as I remember, it works like this. So this event is a chat event, so something that was sent by the user during the conversation. And there is another type of events in the Botpress code. They are events sent by the code, like programming events or something like that. They are not related to what user sends. And DialogEngine, as I've said, makes sending of the chat events to the current node that is being executed. Okay, then the next one is DialogJanitor runner. So DialogJanitor is responsible for periodic remindings to the DialogEngine that DialogEngine should remove some expired sessions. So this allows the server not to store some expired records about user sessions. Then DecisionEngine, here is it. It's responsible for finding the best matched answer according to the user input. So it's used by understanding module, Q&A model, and probably something else. So it has an event on before suggestion selection. Here is it. That basically allows your custom component to change the flow of the suggestional action. So the understanding module that I was talking about is here. And here is the Q&A model. Okay, the next one is event engine. Here is it. It's used for the chat events. So this allows you to register a middleware that will process incoming and outgoing chat events. It has API for sending chat events and API for responding to chat events. So this is basically the service that allows other code components and Botpress modules to change the flow of the event processing when we receive something from the user and send something back to the user. Okay, then we have notifications service. Here is it. Notification service creates internal notifications. So the ones that are shown here. It can return the list of notifications from the notification repository and can mark notification as read. Yeah, here is it. It has notifications repository reference. Mark as read and accessing the notifications. Then database module. Here is it. Database saves persistent data in the database, for example, logs, analytics on the user behavior that gathered by analytics model, sessions of the HITL model, etc., etc. So this, let's say, this model has some data stored about what users do, and the data is stored in the database. Oops. Then the next one is state manager. Here is it. State manager creates and fills the state of the sessions for the chat event. So when we receive something from the user, Botpress creates a chat event for it, and state manager fills like user data, session object, temp, bot objects in this event. It has also API for saving session in a persistent repository and sets expiry dates for sessions. So here is the persist. Okay, here is it. Then config provider. Here is it. Config provider provides access to the Botpress config. It's botpress.config.json file that is stored, I'll show you where, in the data global folder. Here is it. So this service allows you to access this config file. It makes declaration of the default config if there is no config yet, and merges configs if needed. Then hook service makes an ability to make calls to hooks. Hooks are here. They can be stored here, and hooks provide an ability to get callbacks on certain events during the Botpress server lifecycle. The hooks are executed in the virtual machine. Here is it. And hook service receives exceptions from the hook if there is an exception, and writes an exception in the log. Then app lifecycle service It's basically pretty simple. It sends some events like configuration loaded event, services ready, and HTTP server ready events. So these are events that may be used by the other parts of the code. Here they are. Okay, then logger. Basically, loggers are objects that allows services to or other code to write something in the log. Here is it. Okay. Oh, I can't find it directly. Anyway, so it allows you to write something in the log. Logger provider allows you to get logger for a particular module. I'll try to find it. Oh, here is it. Here is the logger provider. Basically, it's just a function that can return you the logger. Okay, I'll try to find logger also. Oh, here. Suppose here we'll find the logger class also. Yeah, here are the implementations of the logger, like persistent console logger, and let's see if, no, only one. Here is it. Okay, next, there are two persisters, logger persisters, logger DB persister and logger file persister. DB persister writes logs in the database using knext module, this one, and file persister writes logs in the file system. There is log janitor also, log janitor runner. Here is it. Log janitor periodically reminds a log service about that log service should remove some expired logs. Oops. Okay, okay, anyway. Then we have statistics service. Let me find, where is it? Yeah, here is it. Statistics is responsible for sending Botpress Server usage statistics to the Google Analytics. It seems like this analytics is used by the Botpress Server developers to understand how people use Botpress, like what features are popular, what features are unpopular, etc., etc. Yeah, here is it. Okay, you can review it in more detail if you want. Then Ghost service. This class is responsible for creation, deletion of the folders, API to check file existing in the folder, subscription on the folder updates, and probably, I'm not sure yet, for caching of the updates in the file system in the database, like to make them as transactions. Then there is real-time service. Here is it. This one is responsible for connecting listeners to the events. And these events are not chat events, but code events. For example, this includes events from the HTTP server. It's pretty simple and short. Here is like sending of the events on guest connection. Then data retention service. Here is it. This one executes the policies for the user data saving, if there are any policies for this. According to a custom policy, some of the user data may be stored for a limited period of time and be removed after this time expires. And there is a data retention janitor that periodically asks data retention service to remove the expired user data. Then we have Workspace Service. This one is responsible for accessing Workspace JSON, and it creates a default Workspace JSON if there is no such file. It adds, deletes bots in the config. So if you have bots in your server, let's say, I'll show where I have them. Yeah, here. So the list of these bots is stored in the workspace JSON file. And also this service makes create, read, update, delete API for users and provides an access to the list of roles. Pretty important file also. Here is it. I'll try to find it in the running server to show you. Yeah, here is it. Workspaces JSON. So I see that I have one bot, one user, and 3 roles. Okay, so this workspace service allows you to access this file. Then monitoring service. This is an interface, not an implementation, for the server monitoring system. There is an implementation of this interface in this source code, but it's empty. And an actual implementation is added only in Pro version. It's not open source. Then there is alerting service that is used to give access to the information about incidents. I'm not sure what incidents are, and this interface also has an empty implementation in the open source codes. And I suppose an actual implementation is added in the Pro version. And then there is licensing service. It's not listed in the fields of the Botpress class, but you can find it like this. Here is it. It's also an interface that has an empty implementation in open source. It's responsible for managing licenses, like creating a license, switching a license. I mean, license, for example, community edition or a paid version. And that's it for now. You can continue the research of the source codes by yourself. You can ask questions in the comments or provide additional information in the comment to this video. I appreciate this. Thank you.